Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another ChiroSecure live event. I'm today's host, Dr. Alan Weinstein. Today we have a really great show for you. Remember, ChiroSecure's live events educate and support you, the practitioner, by making sure you have the information you need to protect you, your practice, and your future. And guess what? We have a special sponsor for today's show, the I Am a Lovable Me award-winning self-esteem books and audio products for children. If you want to see more children in your office, if you want to get more children referrals, then you need a children-friendly office, and the I Am a Lovable Me award-winning series is the way to do it. Turn your office into the type of environment that children love and parents want their children to be part of. The I Am a Lovable Me products make great referral, birthday, and holiday gifts. Available at special discount by using the code KID, that's K-I-D, at the www.IamALovableMe.com shopping cart. And when you're really ready to ramp up your pediatric practice, call 866-2-IMAGINE for bulk discounts on 48 units and above. And now, let's get back to the show. We want you to stay with us to the end of the show, because at the end of the show, we're going to show you how you could save from 10 to 40% over what you're currently paying for your malpractice insurance. On the page you're watching this live event, please take a look at our Facebook like button. It's right below the video, and we would really appreciate if you would click that like button for us. Today we have a really special show. It's really exciting. We're really pumped. Today we have with us Dr. Amanda Apfelblat, and we're going to be talking about the pediatric practice risks and rewards. Dr. Amanda is the president of Michigan Chiropractic Specialists in Garden City, Michigan. She is a Life University graduate and has earned a diplomate in pediatric chiropractic through the ICPA. She's a founding member and current president of the Michigan Chiropractic Pediatric Association, and she currently serves as a board member of the Michigan Association of Chiropractors and the Michigan Chiropractic Pediatric Association. She is an assembly representative for the state of Michigan, serving the International Chiropractors Association. She was featured, as you can see in this picture right here, she was featured this year in our Detroit Magazine as the face of chiropractic pediatrics. She consults and coaches chiropractors focused on pediatric and family practice. With that said, I'm going to bring on the man responsible for all these chiropractic ChiroSecure live events, Dr. Stu Hoffman. Dr. Stu?
Thanks, Alan. What a pleasure it is to have Dr. Amanda with us today. Pediatrics is a big thing in the chiropractic profession, and rightfully so. I always had a family-oriented practice, and practicing in Michigan for many years, that's the way to go. One thing about Amanda is she is a rising star in the state of Michigan in terms of the political spectrum, but also in terms of just getting chiropractic out into the community within her practice and within the association, and she is a star. I've known her for probably almost 10 years. She has been a long-term ChiroSecure supporter, which we always appreciate, and she and I have talked on numerous occasions. I've seen her up on the stage educating other chiropractors, and I just want you to know what a pleasure it is having her here today. So I want to start talking about this subject by just asking Amanda, when you deal with patients in your own practice, how do you actually create a family practice, a pediatric practice? What do you do to educate your patients to create that for yourself?
Well, I think it's important to let families know that you are a family practice and that you would love to meet and evaluate their children. We have a kids board when you walk in with children's pictures on it that get adjusted, and there are always children running through the practice. So we really want to put that we will really want to put it out there that we're a family-friendly practice.
That's great. And so let's get into a little bit more detail with that for our audience. How do you go about educating your patients? Is it through the report of findings that they learn that you're a family-oriented practice, other than what they get to see visually in your office? How do you actually introduce the reason that children need your care as much or more than they may need it?
I think the report of findings is key in explaining why any individual would benefit from chiropractic care, and explaining the nervous system and explaining how it functions. That's a great time to bring up checking the whole family and making sure that everyone is as healthy as possible.
That's great. So when I was in practice, what we did as just commentary with you is we had a number of things that we did for our patients to understand the practice and the need for children to be under care, including lay lectures. We would have educational lectures, which was part of our report of findings, and we would introduce why of chiropractic. And I think from my experience, when the patients understand the why, they almost have no choice but to want to bring their children in along with them. Do you find that to be the case for you as well?
Absolutely. I find that even if they do not schedule an appointment for their child, when they make their initial appointment, after you go over the report of findings and explain the nervous system and that how important it is to function at your maximum health potential, they will ask to bring their children in.
That's exactly what I was, thinking as well. And one of the fun things that we used to do is I'd always have our CAs, when a new patient called our office, they would say they'd like to make an appointment to see the doctor. Well, have you ever been here before? Well, no. And is this appointment for you or a child? And that introduced the whole concept of family care before the patient even got to the office. So, there's a lot of ways that the doctors get to explore and educate patients about bringing in the children. But now they bring in the child to you, and, we both know that that could mean that the child could be, born today, all the way up through their teens, being on their own. What happens when the child shows up in your office? There's a different level of consultation, a different level of examination. How does that work? Elaborate on that for us.
Well, I think what's most important is how you evaluate your pediatric patient. And I think that most chiropractic offices have one intake form. And most of those intake forms will say, what are your chief complaints, 1, 2, and 3, and how long has it been there, etc. But when you're dealing with a child, let's say the child has, an infant has colic, or a child has enuresis. When they bring that child in, they will literally write enuresis as their chief complaint, and we need to make sure that we're evaluating that child properly and substantiating care through subluxation related complaints, and then tying that back into the nervous system and making those medical conditions, making those secondary signs or symptoms to their care.
So do you have a different history form that you utilize for a pediatric patient versus an adult patient?
Actually, I have many. So the Michigan Chiropractic Pediatric Association created forms, and we spent about 2 years doing this and compiling information, because the form that's out there for an adult, it's just nothing like the questions that you need to ask parents to gather the information to substantiate care for children. So we have an intake form. We have evaluation and exam forms. The evaluation, the health intake forms, are geared towards children. We have one for infants, 0 to 12 months, and then there's one for toddlers, 13 to 16 months, and then a 4 to 12-year-old intake form. And in these are different subluxation-related complaints so that we can gather the information and that parents can look at that and understand that chiropractic has a relationship to these signs and symptoms. And I'd like to compare the infant and toddler and child subluxation-related complaints so that you could get an idea of the different questions that are asked. Would that be okay?
Of course.
Okay, great. So for an infant, so we're looking for neurological stress or abnormal neurostructural patterns, which are subluxations in children. Subluxation-related complaints for an infant could be asymmetrical face structure or head tilting, earaches. Do they have colic? Do they spit up? Are there constipation or issues with diarrhea? Do they have difficulty nursing or latching? Have they ever experienced seizures, or do they have neurological tics? Do they have any skin issues like eczema, or do they get rashes? And also, if they are on formula, do they have an intolerance to formula? Or if they are nursing, do they have any intolerance to any foods in the mother's diet? And then as we move on to a toddler, we can ask questions about their digestive issues, or perhaps they have difficulty eating. Have they been diagnosed with autism, or do they have neurosensory dysfunction? Also, do they appear clumsy, or do you see any poor coordination skills? And then moving into a child's form, we can also ask many more complaints now. Do they have any focus concerns or ADHD? Do the parents suspect that? Do they have any learning disabilities in school, or enuresis, poor coordination? Now we can ask about headaches and back pain. Have they had any injuries? Poor posture or scoliosis? And do they have a weak immune system, or they get colds often? So those are very different, and we can tie those back to the nervous system. Let's say you're doing the exam. So the exams are even more definitive, where for an infant we will have 0 to 5 months, 6 months to 12 months, and then toddler, and then child. So let's say there is an issue with the infant nursing. So in the exam, during the neurological testing, you would perform, let's say you were doing the suckling test, and let's say that this reflex was, or let's say during this neurological testing that the suckling was abnormal, and that the infant was having trouble nursing or latching. And through treating this infant with chiropractic care, as you retest this child and these suckling becomes from abnormal to normal, you can show neurological change with cranial nerves. They have marked neurological improvement through chiropractic care, and I believe that that's for a cranial nerve 5, 7, 9, 10, 12. So you'd be showing neurological improvement through chiropractic care.
So that was terrific, Amanda. I think that the people that get to watch this show right now will be thrilled with what you just described, because I didn't even know that you had different forms based on age appropriateness, and I think that's awesome, and I think that would be helpful to everybody, and I hope they all get in touch with you to find out how to get those forms from you. But you also talked about some symptoms, some health issues that some of these families will naturally go through with their children, whether it be something like colic that you mentioned, or ADHD, or whatever it happens to be, from asthma to allergies. And that's great, and you related it all back to the vertebral subluxation complex and the neurological component of it. and I'm a big supporter of that. What kinds of issues have you seen parents actually bring into you that they've had maybe before they met you or before they learned chiropractic and its role in their children and families' health, they were already suffering with, that you've seen excellent results by introducing them to chiropractic and then actually taking care of them?
I think something that's very common is that children will come in, their parents will bring them in for either colic or for earaches. I recently treated a patient that had an earache. So she comes in, and again, if this was an adult form, she probably would have written earache as her chief complaint, which as a chiropractor, we do not treat. But she had a child's entrance form, and her mother looked at all of the different subluxation-related complaints, and I believe she was 7 years old. So by answering these questions, even though she came in for an earache because her mother heard that we could help with earaches, we learned, even before I met her, reading her paperwork, that she had had migraine headaches weekly for 4 months. I learned that she had neck discomfort and that she had neck pain. So there were also reasons to check this child for subluxation. And upon her pediatric examination, she had a positive compression test. She had neck pain. And in her report of systems, we learned that she had had an injury. She was playing soccer 4 months ago. She was hit really hard in the head with a soccer ball, and weekly since then she had had neck pain. She had had muscle spasms in her neck, and she had had a migraine headache once a week. The ear infection, or not the ear infection, but the earache had just come on in the past week, but that was her mother's reason for bringing her in. So we tied that back, of course, by evaluating. She had occipital and upper cervical subluxation, which was what we treated with the earache being concomitant to or a secondary symptom of the subluxation. And within a few weeks, her earache had cleared up. She was no longer having neck pain, and thank goodness was no longer having migraines. So it's just really important to document vertebral subluxation and to document medical conditions as secondaries.
I'm so glad that you said a lot of the things that you just shared, because I think it is important that everyone understands that you indicated that no matter what they come in with, you're still looking to see if there's a structural deviation, vertebral subluxation. You're correcting that, and then you're just relating it back to the potential of the symptoms that they happen to be sharing with you. And that's awesome. You also started to talk about, we'll get into documentation itself in a minute, but your actual examination findings. Based on the different ages and the different categories, how do you actually determine where to go based on that patient?
Well, through the nervous system, if they're having, if they come in with a complaint of enuresis, we're going to look at the lumbar spine and the sacral spine. If they come in with a condition of torticollis, we're going to look at the occipital spine and look at the upper cervical spine. So, just by looking at the nervous system chart and where the nerves flow and the different problems that can occur is a good indicator of where to start. And then, orthopedic testing, neurological testing, testing reflexes.
And what about the parent that wants to bring their children in just because they get it? They understand the chiropractic lifestyle and what it means for them over the course of their lifetime and their children's lifetime. Is there any difference in your approach to those children that may not even have any symptoms to address?
They're still going to fill out the same form, but what I love about these families is that they understand wellness, and most likely their environment at home is a more healthy, more stress-free environment. They probably eat healthier. There probably is less stress to manage at home. But we would still perform the same examination. We would still give them the same health intake form. And we would still check them for subluxation. Even just normal milestones, learning to crawl, learning to walk, learning to ride a bicycle are all very important times to be checked. And just for wellness, for wellness in general. If you're a wellness patient, perhaps you won't need to be checked as much as someone who has an injury, but it's always important to check children on a regular basis.
Agreed. So let's talk a little bit about the actual documentation and maybe even how you diagnose. But how do you go about your documentation procedures with these families that come in?
I use chiropractic diagnostic codes and musculoskeletal codes. So again, in the report of findings is when you're going to explain to the parent where the vertebral subluxation is in the spine. So you're explaining to them the code you're actually using. And so I've never had a problem with codes for diagnosing for children, except early on in practice, and it wasn't so much the coding as my notes. And early on in practice, I had some rejections from an insurance company, a commercial insurance company, and I appealed those claims, and a staff member, a chiropractor from the insurance company, had a meeting with me over the phone. And I explained to him that I was treating vertebral subluxation, and he said, yes, but in your notes it says this child has a cold, he has a fever, he is irritable, and we don't treat colds. We don't, as a chiropractor, you can't treat a cold, you can't treat a fever, you can't treat irritability. And I said, but yes, but my objective findings substantiate vertebral subluxation. And he said that it's really important, and I've done this since then, and I have not had an issue since that time, so I feel very fortunate to have had this conversation, is I will put my subjective chiropractic, the subluxation-related complaints, subluxation findings, and then I will start a sentence with, this child is under care by his pediatrician for the following medical conditions, and then list that so that I can follow it and notate changes, but that it doesn't look like that's what we are treating.
That's awesome advice, and I hope everyone got that. And I want to also add into the conversation one of the reasons that we talk about documentation at all. You know, some people that are listening and watching this will say, well, shoot, why is she even billing insurance? This is a family. They don't really have any issues. It should be a cash plan. And I know that you do have plenty of patients in that category also. But quite frankly, a lot of people do have insurance, and they do pay for health care to some extent. And a lot of the doctors don't have a problem billing when appropriate. And I know that you're one of them, and I think that that's great. But whether it's a cash situation or insurance, that documentation still has to happen. And this is part of what we teach in risk management, is that the doctors sometimes will tell me, well, it was just a cash patient, or it was a child, so I really didn't keep any notes, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. And I try and get across over and over and over again, not only is it important for you to do that for you and for your records and to know a history of what's gone on with that patient and what's going on going forward, but your licensing board actually requires you to have a certain level of documentation, and it doesn't have anything to do with the age of the patient. If they're a patient, you need to document. So not documenting well absolutely can affect your license, And also, if there ever was a malpractice claim, the number one reason to lose a claim is poor documentation. So I really appreciate you sharing what you did about how to document pediatric patients. I think the way you described it was terrific. And I want to also add just a couple of other things about the documentation part. A lot of the doctors ask me, we have so many thousands of doctors utilizing at this point our informed consent packet and having each patient sign an informed consent. But when it comes to a pediatric patient, one thing that we have agreed to is if there's a parent under care and they've signed an informed consent on themselves, I don't think that until somebody is a teenager as a new patient, you need to go in and necessarily have a separate informed consent for that young child. So I just wanted to get that out of the way, and maybe go on to another perspective. What do you feel in terms of pediatric practices, in terms of the risk itself compared to a more general or adult-oriented or pain management practice or personal injury, things like that, when it comes to the safety and effectiveness that we offer through chiropractic care?
Well, I take the risk factor the same as with adults in the practice. I think it's very important to have proper documentation, and I think it's very important to have a good professional relationship with the parents. I think it's very important to be in agreement with the care plan, and I think that it's very important on the report of findings visit to sit down to show them on each report of findings visit with the pediatric patient. I will show the parents a chart of the nervous system, where the subluxation is, what are the symptoms that they came into the practice for their child, and explaining very clearly that we're not treating medical conditions, that we are treating vertebral subluxation, that we hope that as we clear the subluxation, your child's body will be able to function at its maximum potential and will be able to be healthier, and hopefully these conditions will resolve themselves, but that is not what we're treating. And I think it's really important to be in agreement with that on the first visit so that you can move forward on the same page. Because I think that there is a problem. Once I had a child in the practice who had allergies his whole life, and the mother came in for the report of findings, and we went over the nervous system. We were in agreement. We started with the care plan, and then on the third visit, his father started coming in with him for his appointments. And for 3 visits to be exact, I would be adjusting his child, and he would be saying things like, is this making his allergies worse? Is chiropractic not helping him? Is it making it worse? So I think it's really important to be on the same page, and so that the parents know exactly what you're treating. Because if they think that you're not helping a condition, I don't think that's good either. I think when something like that happens, you have to halt the care plan, halt the care, have a meeting with the parents, and make sure that you're on the same page moving forward.
So like with anything else, communication is the key.
Yes.
And if I understand what you said correctly, it's really about managing expectation along with the education.
Yes.
And not only do you need to educate the parent at the very beginning, which is why they're bringing that child in, but you have to reinforce that over time as well. So
yes.
That's good. What about parents that ask about maybe coming to see their newborn child, for you to go and either be part of their birth or see their child, or even go into a hospital? Have you experienced that question, or maybe even had that situation come up?
Yes, absolutely. That happens quite often. I think that, well, first of all, I think it's very risky. And I think when we hear chiropractors who do this, perhaps it was their sister or their cousin or a friend or a good family member, their wife. But my concern would be that if there were any medical complication that would occur, if you didn't have express written consent from the hospital giving you permission to be there. And one of my chiropractic dreams is that at birth that you could elect or request to have a chiropractic evaluation by a chiropractor in the hospital at birth. But that isn't the case. That's not the policy right now. And if you were to be there and you were to adjust an infant and any medical complication arose while that infant was in the hospital, the newborn, not only could you be at risk for suit from the parents, but also from allegations from the hospital. So my policy is that I like to be the first stop on the way home from the hospital. I invite them to come right on the way home. And to me, I think it's such an honor that they bring their baby into our home, into their chiropractic home, before they even go to their actual home. So
that's why we had you on today, because you just did my job for me. And this is something that I discuss a lot, because the doctors that we know out there have a lot of different, I believe, misconceptions over this whole concept of going out and taking care of the pregnant mother and the newborn child. And one of the things that I find as a big, big issue, you brought up about the hospital and having permission, and yes, that can be a big problem for so many reasons, based on, even if the hospital just simply found you there and reported to your licensing board she wasn't here, she was here or whatever, that's misconduct, based on most licensing boards, just that alone. So we don't want to have doctors in that situation, but also we have a lot of doctors that go to home births. And what my concern is that I think it's great to absolutely check that pregnant mother all the way through birth, and then be able and ready to check that child the minute they're born, and that's also okay. But what a lot of doctors do is they overstep their boundaries, because the minute that they're not adjusting and or checking, and they move over to assisting in that birth process, which does happen, then they're actually performing as a doula or a midwife or a certain aspect of obstetrics, and that is where they overreach on their scope of practice in most states and their insurance, no matter who it is, because we cover our doctors to take care of patients chiropractically, but not to deliver babies. And that's where the difference comes in. So you hit it right on in terms of the hospital, but I wanted to just widen that approach as well. I want to ask you just really maybe one last topic, and it's something that I, just came up. We've had a lot of calls from parents that have come into the doctor's office with a child, but the parents are divorced. And then all of a sudden, the mother is bringing in the child, which is more common. The ex-husband, father, now gets an EOB from that doctor's office, starts questioning the mother, and starts calling up the doctor's office, all upset that the doctor is taking care of their patient. Have you dealt with any of that with, the Pediatric Association and or your own practice?
I haven't dealt with that personally. In Michigan, I believe that the law is that you have to have parental consent from one parent. So if as long as one parent has signed the parental consent form, I don't believe there's any issue with adjusting that child.
Yeah, and you're right, and that's what I was hoping and expecting you to share with us. I just want to add into that, though, because, you know, from a risk management point of view, these are things that do show up for us. And one of the things that the doctors on this show need to also understand is always check your own state board to see what the rules and regulations are. Most boards are not so user-friendly to tell you an exact answer to your question, but I find that when you ask the board, when you call them, where can I find the rule and regulation that may have been put forth from the board on the website? And they can sometimes steer you to that and save you from, you know, spinning all your wheels trying to find the answer. But what I get in terms of some of these calls is that the husband now threatens the doctor. You didn't have permission to see my child. Well, you can send them all of the material, all the signatures you want, but in this day and age, it doesn't prevent that disgruntled father from going on the licensing board website making a complaint that he didn't want his child taken care of. And even though that happens, you also get the mother that's bringing in the child, or the father and the other or the other parent is giving them a hard time. And, you know, sometimes these are things that need to be dealt with. And I've actually had to say to some of our doctors, stop taking care of that child, you know, until the parent gives you written authorization from the other parent, so that you're not getting in the middle of a family dispute, because sometimes that's what actually happens. And this is the real issue that I see, Amanda, is that you brought up, well, I checked the state board in Michigan, only one parent has to have the authority for that child's health care, and they're signing off in your office. But how do you know it was the right parent? You don't have the papers, you don't have the divorce decree, and sometimes I've had to go and have the doctor actually deal with that with the parent. So I just want the doctors on this show to understand that these things can come up, and it may even be, you know, if you know that there's a divorce situation and it's a single parent bringing in that child, to maybe simply ask the question, do you think that Johnny's father will have any issue with him getting care here? And again, document that answer, because documentation is everything. These conversations go a long, long way. And even if it went in front of your board because that disgruntled parent made a complaint, so what? Except for the fact that, do you really want to have to deal with defending yourself in front of your board? Most of us would say no. So I just want to ask you, is there anything else you want to add before we shut the show down for today?
I'd just like to add that I think that it's very important to use proper forms for documentation of children in the practice, and that will help you to see more children and to be more confident in doing so.
I just want to say to you, you've been a great friend for a long, long time. I'm so proud of the work that you do up in Michigan with the Pediatric Association, as well as in your own practice. And I'm glad you're a good colleague and a good friend. And I want to thank you for being with us today. And I know that this show is going to help make a difference for so many doctors out there that want to be able to not just see families, but also to be able to take care of them properly. So I want to give you a big thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Alan, you want to wrap up?
Yep, that's perfect. One of the things I want to tell everyone is right to the right of the video you're watching, you're going to see a picture of Dr. Amanda on a PDF. And if you haven't already signed up to receive that, make sure you put your name and your contact information in that form so you'll get a transcript. And Dr. Amanda was also very generous to provide us with, I think, Dr. Amanda, it's the up to 12-month exam form. Is that the one that you've given us to be able to share with everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, so make sure that you put your name, contact information, so not only will you get that transcript, but you will get the form that Dr. Amanda provided us, which was really very, very generous, and we really appreciate that. You'll also see right above that on the page that you're looking at the ability to enroll in our concierge service. And the concierge service notifies you automatically of all the shows that are coming up, but in addition to that, we automatically send you the notes and the transcript from those shows. So please make sure that you go ahead and do that. And then the last thing I want to talk about is that when you click on that form, it's going to take you to the concierge page. And on that page, you're going to have 3 choices. And if you're not already a ChiroSecure client, make sure you check that 3rd choice, because that will not only enroll you in the concierge service, but it'll also open up a form where you can get a quick quote and find out how you could save anywhere from 10 to 40% on the current malpractice premium you're paying. And in addition to that, because we offer so many different types of policies, you will be assured that you will get the right policy for your office as well as the best rate. Once again, I wanted to remind you to visit IamALovableMe.com for a special 15% discount. Use the code KID, that's KID, at www.IamALovableMe.com. And if you're interested in the bulk pricing on 48 units and more, call 866-2-IMAGINE. On behalf of myself, Dr. Alan Weinstein, Dr. Stu Hoffman, the man responsible for these great live events, and our great guest today, Dr. Amanda Apfelblat, we want to thank you for stopping by, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next month. Have a great day, everybody.